let's talk about this Chicago riot. A bunch of teenagers just decided that it'd be cool and interesting, maybe viral. I don't know what the genesis was, honestly. It does seem kind of like a. You remember when they had things called flash mobs, right? So it was
Yeah.
sort of an online, let's do something and it will go viral. I guess maybe this is similar, except it's just a full-on riot.
Hmm.
They jump on cars, they beat people up. Some people were even shot. Obviously, it's totally out of control. Happened in the city of Chicago, which, I mean, this is just another situation of, hey, you voted for this, so you're just getting exactly what you voted for. Is this not a triumph of democracy? They just voted for the most lenient restorative justice candidate available to be mayor.
Hmm.
And now they're getting more crime. Now this new mayor or mayor-elect said, "Oh, I don't condone any of this, but we can't ignore that these kids don't have the services and whatever that they need." It's like, "Oh yeah, if they had some services, if they had a boys and girls club, they wouldn't have done this." Yeah, right. There's something deeply broken about like the culture. There's just something deeply broken about it. It's lawless and it doesn't respect authority. And I don't even know what the solution is, but you shouldn't live in Chicago,
Yeah, the
most likely.
solution
Look at
is
these videos, like there's a video we're going to link of this white lady who just got assaulted by like, I don't know, like 30 kids. And just being frank, most of them are black. This is just another. I mean, how many times do you think we're gonna have to say that Scott Adams was vindicated in the next
yep.
few years?
Yeah.
And you know what's really sad? I don't know what's sad. It's just ironic, I suppose. I bet this woman is super liberal. She's in Chicago, right? She's probably a very Democratic voter, and she probably thinks that systemic racism is at the fault of everything. Well, maybe she still does, but the fact of the matter is, no matter what is the cause of it, you have to just look out for your own self and your own safety at some point. And your solutions have to be geared to just what's happening in front of you. This whole, well, the systemic causes of whatever, we just fix those. Like, but what's going to help the people who are being assaulted right now? It's all well and good to even address those systemic causes. There very well could be such things that you
Yeah,
could address to fix
exactly. I
it.
mean, yeah, it doesn't mean you stop arresting people.
Right. But how does that help the people that we're seeing on video right now being assaulted? How does that keep law and order in a city that exists today that has to function? That's a long-term solution to a long-term problem. But what are our short-term solutions to these short-term issues?
Exactly. Yeah. Doesn't have to
And
be either or.
and then the people who like to blame the long-term, like, oh, systemic racism, oh, poverty and all that. Okay, absolutely, those could be contributing factors. However, don't talk about those things as if that's an excuse not to address a riot.
Yeah.
You've got to prevent these things. You have to either prevent them or react to them quickly in such a way to minimize the damage that you can do both things. And it seems that the people who are all about well, it's systemic racism, it's systemic poverty, it's this and that, they think they also have to ignore the short term damage. And it's just not true. I would even say, yeah, I am on board with this idea that it's a long-term systemic problem because whenever I say the culture is a problem, that is essentially saying that there's sort of a systemic problem. And how do you fix culture? I don't know. How do you fix culture?
Well, the thing is, they don't even acknowledge that culture is a contributing factor.
No, and that's part of the politically they can't because that would be sort of taking away from this idea that it's a systemic problem, right?
Yeah.
So if that's your
That's the thing.
narrative,
I mean,
then
yeah,
you can't even allow that it's just.
yeah, it's a weird position because it seems pretty obvious that there's many factors involved, of which one of them is culture.
I'm on Twitter and you even have black people. They see scenes like this and they just openly ask, where's the video of a bunch of Asian kids doing this? And of course the implication is that there's none, first of all. But what is the conclusion that they want you to draw? They want you to draw the conclusion that there's something fundamentally broken about black culture, right?
Yeah.
And there's black people on there saying this. A lot of people will say it's, glorifying things like violence and disrespect for authority and things like that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it is fair to say that there is something wrong with the culture. And I don't even think it's poverty. This idea that it's poverty ignores, well, for instance, are there no poor people in Japan? There are, correct? But Do they behave like this? No. The answer is just no. And when you ask for the difference, then the difference is either cultural, which is good in a sense because that means that it can be changed. And I would agree. That would be the way I would lean because black culture was not always like this. If you go back to the 50s, etc., right? It was not always like this. It was much more stable, nuclear families, etc., etc. They had to deal with a lot of systemic racism. True. That's absolutely a fact. But the culture wasn't like this. Okay, so that's one explanation. It's the culture is a problem. Another explanation, and this is what white supremacists will tell you, is that it's just genetic. And if that's the case, then that's a problem because that feeds into all the stuff that racists tell us, right? They just say, well, you just can't live with them. You just have to segregate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no fixing this problem. And I don't personally believe that, but if you believe that, then there is no fixing the problem, right? You're kind of going down the almost the Scott Adams road, right? It's like, just don't bother. It's not fixable. I think theoretically it is fixable, but in order to fix anything, you first have to acknowledge the problem. And you can't say, oh, the problem is all the white people. It's not. It's the actual culture of the people doing it. So until that is acknowledged, there will be no solutions. Right now, there's a tolerance for it. The whole when there were BLM riots, the people just said, "Oh, it's okay. It's just the cry of the unheard." Okay, there's so much grace and so much flexibility allowed because people have white guilt, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is this will run out at some point. There will just be pushback, and when I say pushback, of course, I mean violent pushback, and I mean severe pushback because people just don't want to be seeing this kind of thing perpetually. So the more extreme voices who present solutions that are extreme, they will be given more credence. And people who have more draconian, more extreme solutions to this problem, they're going to win out at some point. And I don't want to live in that world either, right? So you should probably fix this sort of thing. Otherwise, we're headed towards that.
I think it feels like the solution needs to start within the black community. I don't think they're going to listen to.
You're probably right, but then I would say hopefully, like the saner voices will win out and gain some traction.